All right, we'll have to feel our way through this, but I'll call the meeting to order. And we'll talk about logistics in a moment, but Brenda, I'll go ahead and have you take roll if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Board Member Boriski.
Present.
Board Member Mercier. Present. Board Member Ridley. Present. Board Member Roth.
Present.
Board Member Freeman. Present. Council Member Anderson is absent. Council Member Woodward.
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
Vice Chair Evan.
Present.
Chair Moore.
Present. Good. Well, I love all the in-person attendance. I'm away at an exotic location at the moment myself over on Race Street, but hopefully I'll be able to change that in the near future. I'm not quite sure. We'll see how the hybrid approach goes. I won't have the advantage of the hand raising feature, so you guys just got to help me there. But we'll figure it out. This is good. You guys, it sounds like you can hear me okay. I know I can hear you guys okay. Good. All right. Then let's dive in. I'll start with a request for the to approve the minutes from the July 11th board meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
So approved.
Second. Okay.
Wonderful.
This is
Any
different for me in a second. So it's Chuck and Dred. Thank you. Quiz tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Any comments, corrections? All right. Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstained? All right. Motion carries. Next, we will move into a public forum. If there's anyone to address us tonight, Brenda, is there anyone from the public?
No, there is not.
All right. Moving on to new business, item 5A, and I will turn that over to Sarah.
All right, so Brenda's going to share her screen, which as she gets set up, I'll get started. Go to view. Full screen mode. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to see so many of you in person. So tonight I'm going to present an item for the electrical instrumentation and control contracting. So this is a repeat from last year. These are the on-call contracts that support the EINC work that we do at the Allen Water Treatment Plant and at our remote facilities, so they're pump stations and such. Next slide. So real quickly, we address EINC at the remote sites in the Allen Water Treatment Plant. A lot of that work is on the main and emergency backup power, the backup or the backbone for the process optimization at the plant, and then we're focusing on single points of failure to reduce risk and ensure operations moving forward. So we have there's three sets of contracts in your packet. So there's the electrical contracts, and they provide the wire, the conduit, the equipment, and we issued an RFP in December 2021. We selected three contractors, Gilmore, McDade Woodcock, and Power Solutions, which was formerly Magna, and we are recommending to contract with each of those in an amount not to exceed $500,000. So even though we're issuing three contracts at $500,000, that doesn't guarantee them work. They are on-call to on-call contract, and we would not spend $500,000 on each of those. We would manage to line item budget, which I have later on in the presentation. So the next group of contracts is for instrumentation. They provide the equipment for programming, calibrate equipment, and configure instrumentation. We solicited these contractors through a SOQ in April 2022. Those two contractors are Huffman and Timberline. Again, it's a recommended contract renewal not to exceed $250,000. So as a part of both of these solicitations, we are able to renew annually for a certain amount of time before we have to go back out for solicitation. And then for our programming contractor who implements our control strategy, that's an optimal source to Golden Automation. The reason it's an optimal source is that Golden Automation also does work with South Platte Renew, and we really want to make sure that we are consistent across the organizations for how we implement programs. So the EI&C improvements that we are currently working on, again, are the backup power systems, installation of power supply and batteries at Allen Water Treatment Plant, variable frequency drive replacements. We're starting a motor control center replacement program. So the approved budget in 2023 is $3.5 million. Next year, the proposed budget is about $3.4 million. So these contracts will go to procuring the equipment, installing the equipment, and making sure that it's working correctly. Any questions?
I'm just gonna have one thing on this. So one of the things with why these are great to have in this type of form is like the last thing that Sarah mentioned, which are MCCs, the motor control centers. Those have lead times that can exceed a year. And so we order them under an on-call. We get it encumbered with that on-call, and then it might take 62 weeks before we actually get the thing delivered. So it helps us get ahead of programmatically replacing motor control centers, which we have a number of them throughout the plant that are, many of which are past their useful life and need to be replaced. So this is a really good mechanism to help us accelerate what's already a long delay because of lead times. Yep.
Any other questions?
So
Go ahead.
I have one. How much then, I mean, this is over $2 million in these contracts, but what would we expect to pay?
So each one is going to be an individual. So all this is an on-call. So it allows us to have access to that contractor for an amount not to exceed 500,000. So then that just sits off to the side. And then we see a project where we need to order an MCC to replace. So at that point in time, we'll get pricing for that specific project or that specific MCC. And then that will go against that 500,000 to draw down that balance. And if it's 350,000, that leaves us with 150,000 to use on another project or something like that.
Okay.
So that's how we use these.
So the other contractors that are also bidding that, it would just basically, well, they wouldn't be getting the job, so their 500 would still be there
That's right.
for the next piece of equipment or whatever.
So sometimes what we'll do is we'll only send it to one because they're uniquely or qualified for it. Other times we'll have two of them bid on it, and whoever gives us the best pricing, we'll go with the one of those two. So it gives us flexibility because we've gone through a competitive process to establish them as contractors. And then we utilize what's best for the project in terms of how we actually execute on individual defined projects.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, Sarah, could you go to full screen for me? You guys are really tiny with it when it's in those boxes. I'm not seeing any hand raised from online. Any other discussion? All right, then can I get, I'm sorry, can I get a motion to recommend that City Council approve items 5A1 through 5A6 as written in the agenda?
I'll move. I'll second.
Brenda, did you get the names?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, thank you. Moving on to item 5B. Sarah, you keep the microphone.
Okay, so this is a contract amendment for Eidos, which is doing our water treatment plant space improvement, design and construction. Next slide, Brenda. So this is a contract amendment.
Sorry, it's taking a minute.
Oh, no, no worries. So under the original contract, this was to add 6 new office spaces over the filter here shown in the picture on the bottom. This is, open air area over, there's concrete underneath, so we can just build office space above that. And then the building shown just on the right in that picture is the blower room. So we were also going to make some adjustments to that room as a part of this project and build a 12-person conference room. Next slide. So that project has evolved, and it's evolved a little bit because of our change in strategy on our ops complex and decentralizing from what we had planned originally. So instead of 6 office spaces, we'll add 7 total new offices and then 14 workstations. Those are shown in the control rooms on the very far right of the diagram there. And then just to the left of that, there's 12 new workstations that will go in. That's replacing the current break room so that each of the operators at the plant can have their own workstation. And then if you go to the very bottom, we are adding the break room down on the right-hand side, making modifications to the restrooms to make sure they're ADA compliant. And then on the left-hand side of the graphic, there's another office, or 2 offices going there, as well as a couple workstations and some electrical improvements that will need to be completed there. Go back one.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So the blower room, as I said, would be modified. We added some additional process improvements. That is a single point of failure at the plant. So we wanted to make sure that we encompass, while we were out there making improvements, that was addressed at the time. So we have added that to the scope, and then the electrical and process improvements as a result of moving some office space around. So the contract summary, our original solicitation for this contract to select Eidos was done in January of 2021, and it started as our facilities master plan study. So that's where we were going to study the larger facility space for the utilities. And then this evolved and was peeled off as a separate project. So the original contract date was in August of 2022, and we're asking for a 1-year amendment. Sorry, my screen's blocking the numbers here. So our original contract amount was $199,670. This amendment is for $215,380 for a total contract of $415. And then this table on the bottom shows the breakdown of the amendments the amendment we're requesting tonight. So additional facility design, those were those new spaces, the bathrooms, the new break room, the control room, and the operator's workstation. And then adding the blower process improvements is a design change that we subbed out through, or Eidos subbed out through their contract. And then we will have services during construction that Eidos and their sub will be involved in.
Okay, so do you want
Oh, sure, I can do that.
You got that
Next
last slide.
Next slide.
Sorry.
Okay, and so this is just a reminder of the space improvements budget that we presented, I think, a couple months ago, where we made some changes and we're no longer considering a centralized operation complex. It's a 3-phase construction space improvements project where we'll have improvement at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. Eidos the construction will start later this year, and then we'll look to add another building on that site for engineers and environmental compliance staff. And then at the service center, we'll look to make some modifications to the building out there for O&M staff.
So we've worked really hard with Eidos and the contractor that's our CMGC contractor to evolve this to be what we think is the best project for the value that we have. We made a mistake in this process in the sense that there's a part of this work that should have come as a contract amendment prior to right now for that work. And what we're doing is we're rolling it all into one contract amendment now. Now, what happened is we originally had planned to sub out that blower work to Carollo. We were going to contract with them separately, and their pricing came in at $170,000. And so we worked with Eidos, who were able to get that down to $95,000. So we saved $75,000. At that point in time, there should have been a contract amendment for that, because what we had originally done was we were planning to use our on-calls that we have with Carollo, because we thought it was going to come in under $170,000. And so the design continued to progress, which is what happens in the normal CMGC circumstance. But this should have come several months ago, that aspect of this. We are sure that we have gotten good pricing and good value. Like I said, we got it for $75,000 less than what the original. We have fixed this to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We have talked to the consultant. We've talked internally about internal controls to make sure this doesn't happen. But I just want to be transparent that some of this is work that has been completed that we're asking for this change order to approve. And that is not how we do business. However, in this instance, because of the way the project evolved, it got missed. And we apologize for that. We want to make sure that there's confidence in the board and council that this is a system that we are making sure that we don't do this. This is a thing that we don't do. Okay, questions?
So what is the exact price of the difference?
Can you back 2 slides? So the amendment is $215,380.
And there's nothing in that we deem as unreasonable. And like we said, if anything, we got much better pricing on a big component of this, which is a process improvement. It's just the sequencing got out of order.
So that's design and construction drawings? I mean,
It's design and construction drawing. So we are ready working with the CMGC contractor we're working with them to get their pricing. Where we have a meeting, I think next week, to negotiate with them what their guaranteed maximum price is that they're going to propose to actually construct the work. And so the schedule has continued to move forward on the project. We have not done anything with construction yet, so that'll be a different contract that comes. This is all the design and construction drawings.
right.
So the change from Carollo to Eidos should have triggered the conversation with Water and Sewer Council prior.
Absolutely.
That was the issue.
Yep, it should have triggered an amendment way back in spring that was issued by Eidos to us. It took several months to get that from Eidos to us, and they just kept moving forward with the project. And it should have stopped at that point in time for us to get us that amendment, which we would have taken forward to say, here, we saved a bunch of money. But because it got lost it just got forgotten.
Do we do other work with Eidos?
We have another contract with them. So they're doing our larger architectural design for the other improvements. So we'll do additional improvements at the Allen treatment plant because we're still in trailers over there too. So these improvements establish the offices and the space necessary for the plant treatment process and the people who work out of the plant. We have engineering staff, we have environmental program staff, we have some administrative and frankly, Sarah and myself and Josh, that at a future project we expect a building somewhere on that plant site. That what we're trying to balance here is the moving parts here are what happens with the Civic Center, because if something happens with the Civic Center and everybody has to move out of the Civic Center, we would ultimately, the original thought was everything was going to centralize potentially over its service center. So there was going to be a complete, public works, parks, utilities, everything over the service center. The process with the Civic Center has stalled. We still have needs. So what we're planning to build at the Allen plant is not a facility that's so permanent that it's a 60 or 80-year facility, but a facility that's permanent enough that it could function as a 10 to 20 or 30 or 40-year facility. So we're not going completely overboard in building a facility there, but we're also building something that's gets everybody out of trailers. We're gonna do the same kind of thing at the service center, where we're gonna take our existing building, we're gonna keep the garages because that space is actually still good, but we're gonna add an administrative wing to that so that the staff that works there have offices and spaces and bathrooms and a conference room. And so we've gone from the decentralized, put everything at service center to a centralized, put everything at service center to a decentralized. Eidos is helping us with that. So that was a long way to answer your question.
Yeah, well,
I guess we can
actually,
expect
I was gonna
that.
say, actually, my question was more in terms of just the break in the process, because it sounds like there is something internal that we missed.
Yep.
That we should have stopped doing when we didn't receive the
That's right.
change order or the change from Eidos. But I guess my question was more, have we seen Eidos delay that aspect in the other project that we're doing with them? So.
No, we aren't. We actually, we paused that project. There was a remaining scope on that project because of the change in strategic approach, that we paused that contract, and we've asked them to rescope a new project that we're expecting from them this fall. So there was a bunch of money left in that contract that they never spent. And so that just went away. And so now we're going to reconstitute it. So it's not what it's a thing that nobody was doing anything malicious or underhanded.
Right.
I think it's just when you're in a CMGC space, that type of contracting model, if a project starts that way, that's how these designs evolve. But what happened in this project is we evolved partway through to a CMGC model. And so they kept functioning as if you're a CMGC, which is where the contractor and the engineer are still working together. But the scope add wasn't originally contemplated in the original contract, and it should have been. And we have had conversations with all of our engineers. We've had we are going through all of our contracts to make sure we don't have another issue like this pending. It's something that I partly chalk up to the fact that it's new engineering division, it's new projects. We haven't done projects for years. It's a new way of doing projects, and it really just functionally, we're trying to get better pricing, and it got missed. And we did get better pricing.
So just since my question might be, I'm just trying to learn. So when you're communicating with these contractors, how is your communication done? I mean, do you guys supervise them? Do you, or do you just at the mercy of their communicating with you?
No. We have project managers that oversee these projects, and so they're in communication with these consultants and contractors, and they manage these contracts to ensure that these types of things are occurring. What happens sometimes it's a struggle to get the consultant to put together an amendment, because the amendment sometimes evolves. And so what they don't want to do is do an amendment and then 3 weeks later do another amendment, and then 3 weeks later doing another amendment, and 3 weeks. And so there's kind of a sweet spot that you try to hit with, this is the right amount of amendment, and then we should push forward an amendment. In this instance, we waited too long to do that, because we don't want to get into this situation where we keep coming back every month with, here's another amendment on this contract, another amendment on this contract. But we also don't want to wait this long where we've done this amount of work to design and then come back and say, oh, we need this amendment. So.
Okay, so I would imagine there is some sort of a percentage of running to that kind of a scenario. So when you look at that, is that like something you have experience and say, like, this is normal to run into 5%, that we will have amendment to this? Or could it be something like, you say, well, I guess is that a normal thing? Like if they show up and they give you something like 50% amendment on that, is that demonstration of their lack of predicting and, that what the situation is going to be, which kind of makes you wonder if there are very capable of handling a job that it was handed to them.
Yep.
Or like.
So we should not have that situation.
But if you do, what would be the percentage that you forecast for that?
So what we do is, if you notice, oftentimes when we propose a contract, we'll put in plus a 10% staff managed contingency for a total authorization amount. So what that's anticipating is this kind of thing.
Okay.
This contract, because of the way it evolved from a master plan to split out to then becoming CMGC, never actually had that put into it. And then when we shifted away from using Carollo as an on-call to do the blower work separately to let's roll it into this contract. That's the step that was missed, is when we rolled it into that contract, there should have been immediately a change order that was brought forward to, instead of doing it under an on-call, do it under this contract. We got a good product and we got really good pricing on it. It's just we missed that step.
Thank you for explaining
Yep.
that. I appreciate that.
Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All right. Then can we, excuse me, get a motion to recommend that City Council approve by motion an amendment? There we go, as written on the screen. Save me some syllables.
I move to approve.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. 5 and Peter, thank you. Thank you for that forthright discussion. I appreciate it. Item 5C, still, I think, starting, Peter, with you.
Yep.
Victor? Okay.
And so Victor and I are here to run through essentially the budgets that we're going to propose to council. You've seen most of this already, so we'll probably make this fairly quick. It's just a review of what we've brought forward. I don't think we've made any changes since the last time we presented this, so we'll go real quick on this one. So we're going to go through the water fund and then the sewer fund, and then Victor's here to talk through the stormwater fund. Okay. So I think everybody here is aware of what we do and who we serve. So there it is again. Our organizational structure, we have 62 approved FTEs. That's how it's broken down, what we do, how it's broken into 3 divisions. And that is water and sewer is the same structure. People are proportionally shared between the 2 funds based on the work that they do. We do have, at the bottom, I'll note that we have 3 FTEs that are approved at a time when we move to connector district monthly billing, which there is interest from the connector districts to do this. I was on a call today where the city of Centennial has expressed an interest in us moving to this. And so we told them that it'll either be next year or the year after. So we're not hiring those positions until we actually move to monthly billing. So we're 62 approved. Our max right now is functionally at 59. This is where we connect mainly. This generally connects to infrastructure and sustainability. Next slide. You can see where our changes are. We have an increase in salary and benefits from year to year at 5%. That's the estimated amount. Commodities are going up a little bit. They've actually stabilized pretty well. Contractual, some of the bulk of that is in our water rights attorneys and our water rights engineers. We foresee a potential for a couple cases. We actually had a case that settled late last week that we were expecting to go to trial on. And when you go to trial, it becomes more expensive. Fortunately, it settled. I think it was supposed to go to trial this week. So they settled like right at the last minute. But we saved some money on it. And so, but we have to budget for it. So that's where that increase largely is. So capital's a big one. And what we're doing here is we are planning for the execution of the lead removal program, lead reduction program in the city. We'll initially get it kicked off. We hope that we're up and running and spending this kind of money if we can, but there's still a lot of hurdles to get there, but we want to make sure at least we're accounting for it in the ideal situation that we actually are up and running to that degree. But that's the largest increase is that lead removal program. Debt service goes down a little bit every year for a total budget change of 16 million, the predominance of which is lead removal. Next slide. Rates and fees, 4.5%. That fits with our rate and fee model to fund all of the normal aspects of the utility outside the lead program. With the exception of we have the first part of the lead program funded. The longer term part of the lead program, we don't know yet because we don't know the full inventory. Once we know the inventory, then we can start to figure out what it's going to take to fund that, and if there is potentially some kind of a lead removal fee that comes at a future date, a few years from now. That is all coming in the next year and a half to this board as well as council as we try to figure out how to remove all the lead service lines in a 10-year period. Water connection fees go up per the methodology, which is tied to engineering news record. And then our capital investment fee, if you recall, that goes up $1 every other year. This is one of the off years where it doesn't go up. So this is the total for the water fund budget. You can see the total revenue is 27 million. The total expenses is 47 million. So part of that is we're going to spend down fund balance. But if you look over at the borrowing proceeds of 13 million, that's utilizing WIFIA. So we will use our WIFIA. We were planning to use WIFIA late this year. Is that right?
For the sewer fund.
For the sewer fund, we're going to use it late this year, and we'll start drawing on it next year for the water fund. And how it breaks down to capital, I think you've seen all this. So this is the reprogramming of the space that I just talked about. Next slide. And then these are our programmatic year-to-year programmatic investments that we've planned for. You can see those EI&C improvements. Those are MCCs and things like that. You can see valve replacement. We're going to talk a little bit about Big Dry Creek a little bit later. And then the biggest capital project underway is city ditch piping, which will be heavy into construction next year. Next slide. And then this is the lead program. So the original program that we had was $1 million a year. That was the original financial plan from several years ago. We have moved that to if we are successful in securing SRF funds, which is the infrastructure money from the infrastructure bill, that's where you see that last line, which is the 6.3 million per year for the next 4 years, and then 8.3 in 2028. That is money that comes from the infrastructure bill, part of which is principal forgiveness, but part of which is debt, low interest debt. So when we take on that kind of low interest debt, we have a debt service payment that keeps going up to the point where we have to figure out how we're going to fund that debt service payment. And the challenge is the window within which we can access principal forgiveness money is a 3-year window. And what you have to do is you have to execute as much as possible, and then you get half of it forgiven. But if we execute that much, then we spike the amount of debt, which means we spike our debt service. And so we're trying to figure out how to access as much free money as possible, but not do it in a way that causes a spike to our residents. And that's the financial modeling that we're working through right now. Once we get the inventory, we'll spend the next year. We'll probably start talking to this board, I would say in the March timeframe of next year, about what our options are for doing that, so we can maximize the federal money on that.
I have a question about.
Sure.
this. So how come they around 2000, it starts going down and it goes to 2026? And it goes, much lower, why is that?
So there you go. Where,
Okay, the capital project in
Oh.
2026, it drops.
so that's so if you go up a slide, that's just, that's largely related to that number, that 10 million number there, which means the broader system programmatic investments start to dip there. And the reason why they're more in 24 and 25 is we're actually spending down fund balance to address a significant amount of backlogged projects. Once we spend down fund balance, we don't want to keep spending to the point where, well, we don't have fund balance after a while. I mean, we get a minimum balance that we want to maintain. And then we try to stay in a more leveled off level of, 10 to, we think it's going to be somewhere around 10 to 12-ish million per year. So that's why, is because you can see there's 20 million in projects and then 13 million, and then it just declines over time.
Yes, I guess I don't understand. Can I get a copy of this so I can actually look at it?
Yeah, it's in the packet. Okay, next slide. And so basically these are enhancements, and so these are one-time or new things that we didn't originally plan for. We have some building rental, we're taking over a trailer. We have some maintenance, software maintenance, and then the big one, the only position request we're making is in conjunction with the IT department, which is a network engineer, half-time dedicated to the Allen plant and the water system, because it is something we definitely need. And then professional services I talked about relative to water rates. Next slide.
So, but is hardware and software maintenance, is that something like that you guys pay annually?
Yeah, a lot of it is. What's the?
So the one that's up there, the EPA is coming out with cybersecurity compliance regulations. So we have budgeted 300,000 to address that for next year.
That's in one of these enhancements. So
Yep.
I think
So
building rental, it's the next enhancement. Go to the next one.
this one.
So that's this one. So you see 68,000 is a half an FTE to help us with the network engineering aspect of basically the Allen plant system. And then we know that we're out of compliance with that EPA regulation on cybersecurity. So we put in a plug number there of 300,000 because we think that that's a rough estimate of what it's going to take to start to get us into compliance with that. So that's what that's there for. Next slide. And then we talked about the main thing. The main one there is water rights, water resources, water rights. Next slide. This is our long-term strategic focus. Taste, odor, and hardness is our immediate priority when we want to improve the product that we deliver. Staffing, we've got actually pretty stabilized. We don't see a need to, we've been ramping up staffing over the last 3 years, and we think we've hit the right level where we're providing the level of service that the customers look for and that we need to in order to maintain a modern utility. Lead reduction program. Metering is a conversion to an AMI approach, which is advanced metering infrastructure, which allows both the customer and us as a utility a whole lot more immediate understanding of water usage. Asset management is our long-term investment in assets. Water resources, EI&C we talked about, and then ultimately making sure that we have a long-term strategy that fiscally works. Sewer fund will be really quick. Infrastructure, it's the other end. You can of the system. So you can see the personnel, this is the proportionate share of, you can see the personnel proportion is much smaller for sewer because it's a smaller amount. Commodities is pretty low. Professional services is, again, it's all pretty, I'm sorry, the professional services, that is largely SPR. So contractual, professional services, and capital, that's where the two SPR line items come in. That's why they're in the tens of millions of dollars, is because that's Englewood's portion of funding SPR, which is run through the sewer enterprise fund. We have some debt service that we're paying down. That debt retires in 26. Is that right?
I think it's 2030,
Is that 2030?
2028 or 2020 or 2030.
Yeah, so we have some debt that's retiring in the next few years, which is actually a good thing. But you see the total budget is actually goes down slightly. Next slide. Rates, 4.5% increase. You can see we did that approach a few years ago where we charged outside customers a rate that's more in line with representing the fact that the city of Englewood residents own the plant. And so there's an inside rate and an outside rate, and those are, you can see how they go up correspondingly. It's not a lot, it's 19 cents per 1,000 gallons. So times 6, it's about $1.20 a month, $1.25. And then you can see the sewer connection fees follow the same methodology. Next slide is the water. Total budget, 29 million, which is a slight decrease of 300,000. Next slide. This is the capital for SPR.
This is the
No, I'm
space
sorry.
improvements
I'm sorry, this is
assigned
space
to the
yeah.
sewer.
This is the sewer funds portion of proportionate share portion of the space improvements, and then you can see at the top the 50-50 capital split for SPR. And then that was relative to connector district billing, is that right?
That's correct.
Yep, so that's a connector district billing software costs associated with some billing enhancements. And then staffing, asset management, South Platte Renew. Big thing on the sewer fund is funding South Platte Renew. And that's it. Oh, and then I'll turn it over to.
Thank you. Afternoon, everybody. I'll cover the stormwater.
Does everybody know Victor? So Victor's our Public Works Director? I'm sorry.
I think we've met once or twice in person now. So going over the revenues for the stormwater fund, bottom right there, you can see this is through May. We're projected to be ahead of the 2021 actual and well ahead of the 2022 actual. That revenue increases primarily in charges for service, and then our investment income. That's the primary deltas there, why you're seeing that up so much. Next slide. On the expense side of the house, we are fully staffed now in our stormwater team, which is fantastic. So we're seeing personnel costs go up as a result of that, as well as capital. And then our debt service is also up again. This is through May. You'll notice that that is already exceeded 2021, 2022. Those are all anticipated now that we're fully staffed and we're paying on our debt service, which is our loan for some of our capital projects, which we'll touch on shortly. All right, 2024 requests, personnel from 2023, 2024, about in line now that we're fully staffed. We know what that number looks like. Commodities are the same, slight drop in contractual professional services, since we're hopeful to do most of that in-house now. Capital, that's a pretty big number. That is our South Englewood stormwater drainage basin, which is currently out on the street for bid.
What happened?
Didn't like that number. Uh-oh.
My apologies.
Restart. We had so Chair, the screen went dark for us for some reason. Just as I was talking about that, oh, there we go. 18 to $21 million line item. Didn't like it.
I see it on my screen.
Are you guys seeing it online?
It's on, I see the screen.
You do see it?
Yes.
That's
Why
weird.
can't I see it here?
That is weird.
Darn it.
Maybe stop the share and well, I guess you just did
I
that.
just did that. Yeah, let me see.
Can you minimize the screen on yours? Maybe the full screen is what's,
All right. Okay. Apologies.
I can attest, she didn't do anything, it just went dark. He said the number, it went dark. It's not a good sign. Yeah, it's something happened on this thing. Oh, view options.
Let's see.
hopefully the IT budget's not going up.
We're not asking for any IT money.
Just at the Allen player.
Well, if you can see it online, that's what's gonna be recorded. We just,
Well, but they're
the
not gonna be
people
able to see it
here,
here.
we've got a couple of extra that we printed out.
Yeah, I do see it online.
Do you have an extra, we're on page 191 of 196.
I don't know if I have.
I can, if I need to go make copies, I can do that too. I got a slide for it.
Well, we're almost,
It's almost done.
well, we got one more presentation after that.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. Okay. So,
Stormwater, it's printed on both sides.
What slide are we on?
We're on page 191.
The overview of title.
Stormwater.
The title slide is
Uh,
the storm expenditure
budget
budget request.
2020.
Oh, okay, you've got it.
there you go.
They're printed on both sides.
You're welcome.
Here,
I think we
here's
can
another
get some down
copy.
here. Mayor, did you need a copy?
No, I got it on
That was
here.
great.
Thank you though.
All right, has everybody got one they can see? Okay. Should be on this one.
And I'll still
it's the
keep
next
trying, as you guys go, I'll keep trying to put it.
All right. So we'll move on from 2024 budget expenditure requests with the big note there being the capital, and we'll touch on that in a minute, but that's the Englewood, or the South Englewood Storm Drainage there. So the next slide should be the 2024 through 2028 Tier 1 capital projects. That's a list of all our projects, capital 24 through 28. You'll notice in 24, line number 5 is the large project that we were just touching on. Totals out request for 2024 to 21,675. And then the next slide is our only enhancement request, and that is to replace our back truck.
There, I think I got it.
Oh, it's back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Just get really hot with all that.
You had to get past the capital, and it's all good.
Sorry, I had to.
Oh, so we can-
We'll pull it up again.
No worries.
That's our first hybrid meeting.
I know.
What happened?
Went away.
It went away again.
Sorry, guys.
Any questions on the capital list? And then we'll talk about the enhancement real fast.
Where do you put all the like emergency, like big projects, like
I'm sorry?
where do you put the big projects, like the sinkhole that we have in Oxford and that one?
The sinkholes are emergency projects, so there's not a specific line item for that. So we're currently working with finance. We're also talking to FEMA about opportunities there for reimbursement. That's not a project, that's an emergency that popped up out of nowhere. So it's not
So then-
specifically accounted for in the stormwater fund.
And so there is no place for it that is kind of forecasted to keep that in your budget on an annual basis?
Not in specifically in the stormwater fund. We don't particularly have a line item for emergencies that would come from either specific loans. We would approach the city manager's office and city council about unassigned fund balance, depending on the size. we have a number of mechanisms to address that. The Oxford sinkhole, if anybody's
So
wondering.
how do you guys handle situations like that? Like if you get more of that, how would you, I mean, where does that show in the future?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So the question was, how do we handle emergencies from a funding perspective? Probably across the board, whether it's water or sewer or storm. We could balance it into the budget, and then we'd have to talk about how we balance that back for projects. So we could float
you
it
could-
through stormwater.
Or so you get it from some other,
Correct. And specific to the Oxford sinkhole, we have on-call contractors, similar to what Peter talked about earlier, that have locked in time and material costs. So we contract through our on-call contractor per the city's procurement policy for emergencies and begin that work, because we can't go out to bid and go through a whole big procurement process. We don't want cars falling in the hole or anything like that, so we gotta take action immediately. So we follow up.
so is it correct to presume that you still don't know how much that's gonna cost? You still don't know who's gonna fix that?
We're fixing it, and the current estimate is between $750 and $850.
And so this is not part of this?
No, it's not a capital project. That's an emergency project.
All right, thank you.
The last thing I have, well, sorry, 2 or 3 things here. The enhancement is the back truck. We're currently using utilities hand-me-down back truck from 2019. It is on its last legs. We are band-aiding it together and in dire need of replacement. And so we previously had that at $350,000. Recent pricing came back from the vendor at $400,000. That's why you'll see that change popped up there.
Was that, did we buy that in 2019?
No, it was retired from utilities in 2019.
Oh, okay.
Utilities got a new one in 2019. Public Works got a hand-me-down in 2019.
Okay.
So, and we're continuing to work well with utilities, and when that truck's down and they're not using their truck, we're figuring it out to make sure.
In 2019, the Public Works Director also, for a period of time, was the Utilities Director, so I think it was.
That probably has something to do with
It's
it,
all,
too.
it's all Public Works is.
We were kind of, Councilmember Wood, we were kind of hoping you could tell us from 2019. So yes, we're in dire need of a new one. That one's actually been offline now for about 3 or 4 months. We have parts on order, and we will have it back up and running for a short period of time, and fingers crossed for a longer period of time. So next slide is the 2024 revenue proposal. There you go. We are proposing to increase the stormwater rate by 7.2%, in line with the engineering cost average index, and that's to cover the inflationary costs that we're seeing across the board for time and materials there, which has a budget impact or a budget increase approximately based on numbers from 2023, somewhere in the $273,000 range. Next slide, future year considerations, things that we see potentially impacting our stormwater budget. Fuel price fluctuation is a big one. Material prices, contract labor, contractor availability, even our on-call, we had a tough time getting out to our sinkholes. Staffing levels, we'll knock on wood that remains at an all-time high. Infrastructure conditions, and then our unknown and extreme weather events that can impact things. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so any questions on all 3? Like we said, I think it's all stuff you've seen before. Okay.
Could I get a motion to recommend that City Council approve by ordinance and resolution the proposed 2024 budget and updated capital improvement plan for the water, sewer, and stormwater enterprise funds, including the corresponding rates and fees for 2024?
I move to approve.
Give it a second.
You should move to.
I'm moving to
I'm s-
approve.
Moving right along.
I'm sorry, did we get it? Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Peter, we're a little tight on the clock, but we can try to speed through the rest.
No, so, yes, thank you, Chair. I think I'll quickly talk about Big Dry Creek without going through the full discussion. What I'll do is, what I would recommend is that I just introduce what we're planning to do with Big Dry Creek, and then we'll just go into a much more detailed conversation in a future meeting, because there's no pressing time on this. It's just, I want you all to be aware of what we're thinking. And so essentially what we're thinking, and what this presentation will go through, and what the discussion, which we think will probably take about 20 minutes to a half an hour, is because we've changed our approach to how we address our water supply by piping city ditch, it may result in us it may make sense not to execute the second part of the Big Dry Creek project, because the costs for the Big Dry Creek project are much higher than they were ever estimated 3 or 4 years ago. Our contractor has priced out what we think the total project is. It's in excess of $3 million. And we think that the benefit, because we are now piping city ditch, is no longer as significant from the Big Dry Creek project. And so what we would recommend, we don't want to eliminate the project, because there's a water resources and a water supply and a water decree that's associated with it. So we don't want to eliminate the project, but we think it makes sense to retime it and use that $3 million for other more pressing needs throughout the system. So we have a much more detailed presentation on that. But I just wanted to give a quick introduction of what that is, and then we'll talk about it at a future meeting, if that's okay, Chair.
That sounds good. Thank you. Anything else under staff's choice?
Well, I guess, is there any quick questions on any of that? Any immediate concerns?
I have a question. So the increase on the water would be 4.5, the sewer would be 4.5, and that's the forecasting, right? And 7.2 for sewer, correct?
On the budget, yeah. On the previous item, yes. Yep. And those are all in line with the financial plans that but it doesn't sound like there's any questions on Big Dry Creek. Like I said, we'll go into much more detail on it. We have a whole rationale for why we're at this, and it deserves more than me jamming through it in a minute and a half.
Agreed.
And then the second item on staff's choice is boards and commissions training review. So
Yep, this is just the point in time where I was going to hand out some binders, which you can take before you leave, and has all of the printouts in the binders for your enjoyment and reading pleasure. So please take the time to review that. It's got all the charter and the handbook in there and Bob's rules of order. So we can refer to it when we're having these meetings. So if there's ever a question of how we're having these meetings, we can have it right in front of us. So please take one of those binders when you leave.
okay.
Wonderful.
Jim.
The next item we have is our staff look ahead schedule. So we're bringing a lot of stuff this fall. If you look at the schedule, we're not sure all those things are going to go in September, but a lot of them are. So I guess one of the good things about being fully up and running is we're doing a lot of stuff, but it means this meeting is going to be packed with more and more items. But you can see what's on there. Is there any question anybody sees from those items? Okay.
Just we need to slide in Big Dry Creek in there at some point too now, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just we'll put that one in.
All right. Everyone brings pillow, extra food and water for the September meeting. Is there any, I'll move to board members' choice for our final item. Is there anything that a board member would like to bring up?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Have we settled with Centennial Water yet on, or had the court case resolved as to the pricing?
So the court case was resolved probably about a year ago. And the way that court case resolved is we actually, we're not successful in our argument. And so what that meant is the appraisal went forward with the consideration of water quality, which we didn't believe was something should be, but the judge ruled that it should. And so the appraisal is underway. With that consideration, we tried to use a single appraiser. We couldn't get Centennial to agree to that. So then we had to execute a process where we each hired our own appraiser, and then we hired a third appraiser. So we now have 3 appraisers that are right now in the process of doing that appraisal. And then those 3 appraisers all come together with what they think the numbers are. And then that comes back to us as a final number for that change to that. So we initiated that in February 2021. We are 2.5 years into that process. The good thing is whatever number they come up with for the change in the pricing is retroactive to February 2021. So we won't lose any money.
And we know it'll be higher than it was. Everything.
I would be shocked. So we don't know anything, but just knowing the price of water,
Yeah.
I would be shocked. So, but yeah, so we got that ruling, and the ruling was that water quality was something that should be considered as part of the appraisal.
And then my second question, have we resolved the historical ditch in Littleton as far as piping through that?
Resolved, I wouldn't necessarily say resolved. We think we have found the best solution that can provide the strongest balance of protecting the historic interests to the degree that we can, while also accomplishing our goals, which is piping the city ditch. We think we found an alignment which was actually different than the 2 alignments that we proposed in that we showed in the public meetings. We had the one alignment that was on the west side of the highway, but we weren't sure from a hydraulics how well that would work. Turns out that it doesn't work great from a hydraulics perspective, and I don't think we should, and we shouldn't do that. It doesn't work. The other one was we followed just the ditch alignment, which the historic communities were not happy with. What we did find is that there is actually there is an alignment that's through part of the railroad right of way on the east side of the ditch or east side of the highway of Santa Fe, that preserves a lot of the ditch intact. It won't flow, but also allows us to straight line the pipe and actually get a more effective alignment. And so we think that based on the feedback from the public meetings, that solution actually maximizes the benefit across the board in terms of what we can do. So no, I think there are people in Littleton that will not agree with that, because one of their main priorities is to keep the ditch flowing water, and we have just told them it's not going to flow water anymore. And so there's a subset of people who have had that flow behind their house or through their property or through their area, that no matter what kind of solution I think we come up with, they're not going to be pleased with.
Yeah, they have hoses and pumps going into that ditch, water in their yard.
There is that.
Gardens.
Yeah, yes, it's a common, water theft is a common thing with an open ditch.
Any further questions or comments?
Zach kind of told me he's gonna give me they report that they would be Breda water. Can you please remind him to forward that report with how, you know, how he was part of that in research in Denver?
The Brita filters for the lead service
Yeah,
lines?
and I still would be interested to see that report, that how they came up.
Yeah, I think, Josh, are you aware of that?
No, but I'll speak to Zach tomorrow and get aware with it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep.
And then
And so what Board Member Freeman's talking about is, so our treatment manager spent 30 years at Denver Water and was actively involved in their lead reduction program methodology and approach, and was part of the study that proved out that Brita filters actually provide better protection than almost anything for people who potentially have some kind of a lead exposure in their water. So the Brita filter will actually, some of these Brita filters will actually take the lead out. So that's what you're referring to.
yes, please. And then I still interested in that 2030 agenda.
Oh yeah, I owe you that. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That's a UN 2030 goals.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, anything further? All right, apologize, we ran over a little bit tonight, but we'll adjourn. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, all.